Have you ever felt fear? I mean true fear, the kind that steals your breath and paralyzes your body. Do you know the difference between what's real and what's fantasy? I will tell 3 stories that will blur the line between fantasy and reality. Can you tell which one is fact and which are mere fantasy? Are you so sure you know the difference? My name is Sheri St, and this is Authentic Fear. When I was 15, there was a kid at school named John who used to beat me up. I did everything I could to try to get him to stop tormenting me and be my friend. I even sold him pills from my mom's medicine cabinet. After a while, he stopped, and we actually began to bond over the pills and our love of the same music. One weekend, he invited me over to his place to spend the night while his parents were out of town. He lived on a huge plot of land with no neighbors close by. Soon after I arrived, he asked me, "Do you want to see something scary? But you can't tell my brother." He led me to the barn and up a ladder. When we reached the top, there was a loft with what looked like a satanic altar with dead pigeons and rabbits all over. It's one thing to see a dead animal, but this was different. These had been horribly mutilated. There was blood everywhere. I was terrified. He looked at me and said, "Don't you ever tell my brother or you're dead." That's when he pulled out a book and handed it to me. On the cover was the word Necronomicon. "Read it," he said forcefully. My hands shook as I took it from him and opened it. But before I could read what was inside, bright lights shone through the cracks of the barn and a car door slammed. John grabbed the book, looked at me again, and said, "Don't tell anyone." I followed him out. It was his brother. After his brother had gone in the house, he led me towards a large group of trees, like a forest. I followed him because that's what you do when you're a kid. We followed a path to a clearing. In front of us was an old house that looked as though it had been unfinished. All there was a frame and a cellar door. John pushed the book at me again and said, "You're going to go down there, and you're going to read these incantations using only this light." He handed me a Bic lighter. I took a deep breath and began to step slowly down the cellar stairs. The wood was rotted, and I could hear the sound of dripping coming from the darkness. In the dim light from the lighter, I could see what looked like handprints painted on the walls. I could swear I faintly heard the sound of whispering, but didn't want to appear scared and get beat up again, so I pushed myself ahead. When we reached the bottom, I looked at John. Even he was scared at this point. I opened the book, the lighter burning my finger. I had been raised Christian and went to a Christian school until recently, and knew it was a stupid thing to do, but I was more afraid of John than the book at that point. So I slowly began to read the pages, but shortly in I stopped. I could clearly hear a voice. It sounded like it was saying, "Do you believe in Satan?" John must have heard it too, because I dropped the book and the lighter, and we both ran out of there in fear. The next day, during daylight, we went back to get the book, and when we reached the clearing, there was nothing there. No house, no cellar, no book, nothing but empty land. Neither of us had an explanation for it. How did it just disappear? It was like some sort of evil oasis. That was the most supernatural event that I have ever experienced. In my early 20s, I moved from my hometown in Georgia to Nashville. There was an old house in the country owned by an elderly woman named Ellie, who gave starving artists room and board while they chased their dreams. My cousin had stayed there while he wrote his first novel and put in a good word for me. It was a beautiful colonial-style house, surrounded by trees with sprawling lawns and a lake. My plan was to work as a waitress at a local restaurant while I did gigs anywhere that would allow me. Luckily, the restaurant that hired me allowed me to play there on Saturday nights. Life was good. I was bringing in enough money to pay my room and board, as well as some extra to put away. Ellie and I got along great. She would tell me stories about when she was young and striving to achieve her dream. Unfortunately, she never made it far, but strived to help others to achieve their dreams. One night, after dinner, I headed up to my room and noticed something I hadn't noticed before. A large picture on the wall was crooked, and I could see what looked like a crack in the wall. I moved the picture more and noticed a hidden cubbyhole. It was about 4 feet long and 4 feet wide. I was curious and waited impatiently for later that night to check it out. At 4 a.m., when I was sure everyone was asleep, I snuck out into the hallway and removed the picture. The door of the cubby pushed inwards. I pushed it and was met with complete darkness as I expected. I went back to my room and grabbed a flashlight and shone it inside. I could see what looked like a rather large hidden room. My curiosity took over. I had to know what was inside. The cubby was 3 feet off the ground, so it was a struggle to squeeze in, but I managed. Once inside, I shone the flashlight around the room and was terrified by what I saw. On the floor was a large pentagram, painted in red, with candles placed around it. There were pictures of men and women lining the walls that looked like professional headshots. Some of them had red X's through them. I didn't even want to know what that was all about. I quickly squeezed back out through the cubby door, put the picture back up, and immediately began finding another place to live. I didn't bother going to the cops, because the last thing I wanted was to be a picture on that wall. From when I was about 3 years old, I remember having sleep paralysis. I would see this beautiful woman at the foot of my bed, just watching me. She didn't really scare me, but not being able to move did. I would tell my parents, but they never believed me. It would only happen every couple of months, so I eventually just accepted it. She never did anything to harm me, just stared. Years later, when I was about 14, I was hanging out with my friend Stacy at my house. She pulled out a Ouija board and said, "Look what I found at the game store. Want to give it a try?" Being a dumb kid, I thought, why not? Could be fun. So we set it up and began asking it stupid questions like, does Josh like me? And will we be friends forever? You know, stupid shit. It was all fun and games until I asked, what am I going to be when I grow up? And slowly it spelled out, you're going to be a star, which would have been exactly what I wanted to hear if the planchette didn't suddenly feel scalding hot, and when we both pulled our hands away, fly across the room with so much force it knocked over my lamp. We both burst into tears and ran out of there. I tried to forget the experience, but over the next few years I would have this horrible recurring nightmare about looking in the mirror and instead of seeing my face, I would see the woman that was always at the foot of my bed. One night, I had the worst dream yet. I dreamed that her reflection said to me, "You're going to be a star," and grabbed me and pulled me into the mirror. After that, I never saw her again, but less than a year later, I got an offer to model for an agency, and everything exploded after that. I did a few commercials, got a role in my first movie, and the rest is history. Who she was and why I no longer see her, I'll probably never know, but somehow I feel if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be here today. Whether that's a blessing or a curse, I don't know. Could you tell which story was true? Before I reveal the truth, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so you can be notified of more terrifying videos as they are uploaded. And if you would like your story to appear in a future video, send your true or fictional stories to the email in the description box. Now for the authentic truth. Story 1. Evil Oasis was told by Marilyn Manson on an episode of Celebrity Ghost Stories. The other 2 stories were written by myself. Thank you for watching. See you next time. I was hanging out with my friend Stacy at my house. She pulled out a Ouija board. I was hanging out with my friend Stacy at my house. She pulled out a Ouija board and said, "Look what I found at the game store. Want to give it a try?" I was hanging out with my friend Stacy at my house. She pulled out a Ouija board. Sorry. Oh shit.